This combination of live and cartoon was brought to perfection in the 1946 film Song of the South, where the song Zippity-Doo-Dah was born. Actor James Baskett mastered the difficult task of knowing how to look at objects that were not really there when he filmed his scenes. Having the correct eye line really helps make the combination believable. I had to do that too in Pete's Dragon.
Well, what shall we do now? Any suggestions?
Disney continued to mix people and cartoons from time to time in other films like Fun and Fancy Free.
Has anybody seen anything of a teensy-weensy little mouse?
Oh, Mr. Bergen!
Bergen!
What's the matter with him? Something he ate?
No, it's a figmentation of his imagination.
No.
For Disney's first big action-adventure film, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the special effects team got a lot of help from Iwerk's special processes. And the film almost had an animation sequence depicting the mysterious creatures of the deep. There's even a little piece of the deleted sequence in the theatrical trailer. Much of the animation was completed before deciding that it didn't really fit the picture, and so it wasn't used. Walt Disney's television series occasionally mixed the two worlds. Here, Clarence Nash, the voice of Donald Duck, has an argument with himself.
Stop that! You make me nervous.
That's good. I make you nervous. You make me nervous.
You make me twice as nervous. Yeah? Well, you make me sick. You make me twice as sick. You make me ill. Twice as ill. 3 times. 4, 5, 6. Don't shit with the lake.
Then, in 1959, inspired by a British process, Iwerks made a revolutionary improvement on the technique. It was used the first time in 10 Who Dared, a story of exploring the Colorado River. This new magic trick helped the absent-minded professor's car fly after he invented flubber. It helped Haley Mills travel to Boston in The Parent Trap without ever leaving Disney's Burbank studio.
All of the Mary Poppins things, which involved this sodium vapor process that he'd invented. The sodium vapor is a kind of light. It's a yellow light that you project on a screen behind the actors that you can then subtract this yellow. It looks like just a bright yellow screen. And you can subtract that out and just leave the actors and put a new background in its place.
1964 became the Academy Award-winning year for all these special effects coming together in Walt Disney's greatest achievement.
Mary Poppins is a live musical fantasy. The whole story is carried out by live actors. And it's, of course, we have a lot of tricks of the trade here that we incorporated into Mary Poppins.
For instance, the movie made enormous use of matte paintings by outstanding artist Peter Ellenshaw. Live-action film could be combined with a painting using an optical printer in the Special Process Lab. Many live-action scenes, even simple ones, use the sodium screen process. The special yellow lights would not show up on film, leaving an almost black background. Then it could be combined with a real background, a matte painting, a cartoon background, whatever the filmmakers could imagine. Of course, the centerpiece of Mary Poppins was the Jolly Holiday.
Never! Never!
They did stuff that you don't even realize. The carousel is a cartoon background with a live-action carousel set painted to look like a cartoon background. And then an animated character who got placed into the live set with animated shadows of the real actors. Wow. It had been nearly 20 years since a Disney film combined live action with animation in such a spectacular way.
Incredible. Yeah, that was one of Ub's many, many, many inventions.
Sodium screen became a common tool at Disney Studio for many years.
The sodium vapor screen that he invented And it's a wonderful process. It just, in its day, was so far beyond what anybody else in town could do that it really allowed us to do a lot of things that nobody else could do.
The technique was also used for live action to avoid complicated shooting on location.
Little tricks and double printing and all of the trick photography that goes with many, many of the films we made. All the wonderful optical work. Any of the processes of adding titles, even as simple as that, any of those kinds of things. Everything funneled through Hub's process lab, and out came something that hadn't been there before.
So that brings us to Pete's Dragon, which we shot in the summer of 1976. For me, it was fantastic. I was so interested in everything they did.
What's the name of this town again?
Passamaquoddy.
Quantama what?
Passamaquoddy.
Got it.
There is no such town as Passamaquoddy. It was made up. The whole town of Passamaquoddy was actually built on the Disney backlot in Burbank. They added a matte element in the background there to make it look like we were really on the East Coast. They even built a harbor and filled it with water, loaded it with boats that you could sail around on. It was as real as any small town in America. They built this too, but I'll let you in on a little secret. It's a miniature, and it's a movie trick to film water in slow motion to make the scene look bigger. See, this doesn't look as real. You see, in those days, the movie studios tried to avoid going on location. They had more control over lighting and sound inside the lot. I loved the movie set. I was so interested in everything they did, you know, how they did the sound and how they did the camera work. And I loved everything. I loved the grips. I loved how they built the sets. I loved everything. When Elliot ran through the schoolhouse, they actually rigged all that. So we actually saw those effects, and it was just so great for a kid to see.
Jehoshaphat, would you look at that?
A lot of people are just interested in acting and that's it. But I loved every aspect of everything. The only thing I didn't like was the fame.
If I didn't know any better, I'd say he was a dragon.
We had the set that was full of these big, huge actors and comedians like Mickey Rooney and Red Buttons. And when you get comedians of that caliber together, you get this thing where they're always trying to outdo each other. And when the script called for them to stumble up to the cave, and this was just a brief scene, and each one of them was trying to outdo the other. So Mickey would stumble and fall, and then Red would stumble and fall more. And then Mickey would try to outdo him, and it would just go, and it was hilarious. You know, the first scene was like 15-minute long, and I mean, the crew and everyone was just laughing hysterically, and the director said, that was fantastic, but we can't have a 20-minute scene where you two are just walking to the cave. We've got to reshoot it. And so they went and they reshot it, but the second time, instead of 20 minutes, it was 15, and then the third time, instead of 15, it was 10. Oh, it was just hilarious.
Are you convinced?
Absolutely.
Jim Dale, again, another real comedic talent, singer and dancer from England. Jim Backus was another huge comedian. You know, all these guys know each other. When they got together, it was just incredible. And these guys were focusing really on me, because I was the 12-year-old. Anna White, the choreographer, I had just started, like days, tap and jazz and ballet, but I didn't have any formal background. I never had an acting lesson. Hundreds of kids tried out for Pete, and I had, I think it was 13 complete interviews and callbacks, but I think Disney always went for kind of the natural. Anna and her assistants taught me the dancing. You know, eventually I became an All-American pole vaulter in college prep, and I'll tell you what, after I did my dancing and everything, I was an incredible athlete, and I attribute that all to dancing, especially ballet. I mean, I recommend to anyone, do ballet. That's me with Helen Reddy. Helen Reddy was really great. Now, this was her first movie, but you have to remember that she was a huge, huge singing star. She had a son. He was younger than me, probably about half my age. She was really the mother figure who was, you know, kind of the protector of me. And I mean, I loved her to death.
It's not easy to share somebody's dream. It gets easy when you work as a team.
And of course, here's Elliot.
Hi, Elliot.
It was a real challenge to act with someone who wasn't really there. Here's how we did it. I'd be on that sodium stage I've been telling you about. Sodium was a chemical in the lights that gave off a very specific kind of yellow.
You sure changed my life.
Now, it doesn't look yellow here, and that's the point. UB Iwerks modified a 3-strip camera with a special prism that took out the yellow and split the image in two. This piece of film, and in the same camera, at the same time, a second negative would photograph the actor as a black and white silhouette. From that black and white negative, they would make a high contrast matte. One matte that was black on white and the other that was white on black. In Disney's optical printer, they would use those mattes to cut holes in the action that they could expose a new negative with anything else they wanted to combine it with.
You sure changed my life.
And they had to do much the same thing with the animation.
Everything seems so new.
Since these mattes captured action and motion, it was also known as the traveling matte process. To make things more real, they could add a shadow layer.
I love you too.
Don't worry, there's not going to be a test. But you see how difficult it was before computers. They really pushed the limits on this film too, attempting things that hadn't been done before.
Remember the night when you first confided, and things went so right that we both decided.
Whoa, that was fun and scary, but it was always safe. I had no idea how it was going to turn out or what I was looking at or anything. It was just pure, solid imagination. Here I'm put with a background that is made up of both real and painted elements. Later they even added real tree branches between me and the background to give it depth.
Hi!
Long shots were outdoors on the Disney Ranch, but the close-up was on the stage. Hey, I gotta tell you something. The last 2 auditions we actually had to record a scene where I was crying because I was saying goodbye to the dragon.
I won't see you again, will I?
And so the director, Don Chafee, he held his hand up as high as he could and he said, "This is where Elliot's gonna be," and his hand was right in the center of the sodium. It's just so bright. I mean, you look into those lights just for seconds. You know, tears start streaming down your face and it's just so bright. So I'm doing this 3-page soliloquy and just tears are flowing down my face. And afterwards he came up and he said, "You're the best. Out of these 1,000 kids, you were the only one really that could imagine the dragon being there." And those tears, and I was trying to look at him, you know, and it was not only was I imagining the dragon, but I was imagining the director sitting there and complimenting me because I couldn't see anything. All I could see was these bright sunspots because I had been standing there. The brightness of those lights was the toughest thing about the sodium work. I'm not even going to go into all the color and exposure tests they had to do. Whew. For simple scenes of Elliot alone, they could just use a photograph as a background, with animation cells on top. Sound familiar? That's just how Walt Disney did it back in the 1920s for some of the Alice comedies. But the idea was for you to enjoy the movie and not really notice the individual pieces. And even though now you know how it's done, it's still magical. So what's the rest of our story? Well, with the arrival of computers, now these kind of dazzling effects can be done digitally, combining actors with realistic computer animation. So when you watch a classic movie like Pete's Dragon, and maybe the effects don't look quite as real as a new film, think about all the hard work that took filmmaking pioneers more than 80 years to develop these special effects. I was lucky to be part of it. When I went to college prep, I pretty much gave up acting. But I sure remember those Brazzle Dazzle days. That summer we made Pete's Dragon, and I still miss Elliot.